Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. A huge event coming up. HEX promoter Jacob Watts, mate, welcome.
Hey Mitch, thanks for having me on.
Mate, how stoked are you to have this card? This has got to be at least one of your favourite cards that you've ever put together.
Yeah, I'm definitely very excited, man. This main event especially, I get really excited for a lot of fights in the UFC and one PFL, but having this kind of caliber of a fight so close to home, it really excites me. Every time I talk about it to anyone, whether it's my friends or fighters, I can't stop smiling about it. It's such a big fight, and the rest of the card as well is just stacked top to bottom. So yeah, I'm super keen to put this one on.
How hard is it to put together a champion versus champion fight? Because you've got Kevin Jouset, who's the middleweight champ, Kitt Campbell, who's the welterweight champ. Is there a bit of like, no, I want to go after his belt. I don't want to have to defend my belt. Like, I want more money then. Is it tricky?
That was super easy, man. After Kevin's win at HEX 25, when he beat Priscus for the middleweight title, he firstly came straight up to me and he said, I want Kitt. And then he went and spoke to Kitt because Kitt was in attendance. And, he said, look, and it was respectfully, they're friends. He said, look, I want a shot at your belt. Kitt never backs down from a challenge. He's someone that's had a lot of issues getting fights. He's probably one of the hardest guys in the country to match up. So he just wants to fight. And yeah, this was definitely the easiest matchup I've ever put together. Do
you know why he wanted that fight?
Kevin or Kitt?
Kevin. Like, why going? Because I talked Callum Potter, and it was almost like straight after the victory, like beeline to him and said it to him in person. Do you know if there's any extra motivation behind it?
Look, I think he just wants the toughest challenges. He wants to make history. He wants to get into the UFC and a win over someone like Kitt and collecting a second belt, being a 2-division champion. That's probably the best way he's going to get to that goal. So I think that was his motivation behind it. Like I said, there's no bad blood or anything like that between these guys. They've got a lot of respect for each other, but I think he just wants the hardest challenges so that he can make it to the UFC where he believes he belongs.
And let's say he doesn't, but Kevin picks up the victory and he's got 2 belts. As a promoter, what are you doing? Is he dropping one? Is he defending both? How do you work that out?
It'd be something we'd have to speak to Kevin about after, if he did win, we'd have to speak to him after that and see what he wants to do. It'd be great to have him defending both, but I guess that's kind of just up to him what he wants to do. If he wanted to stay at welterweight for the foreseeable future, we'd probably have to drop the title. But, that's just a conversation we'd have to wait to have after the fight.
And alternatively, if Kitt wins and then turns around and goes, well, now I want a middleweight shot, do you give him that?
Who knows, man? I guess it kind of depends how this fight plays out. It's a hard question to answer. If it's a super close fight and Kitt gets the win and then wants to go up to middleweight, well, I mean, he's welcomed Kevin to his title. I think it would only be fair for Kevin to welcome Kitt up to his. But I guess these are all questions that we can answer once this fight's done, and we see how it plays out and what the result is.
And you can only see it live at Melbourne Pavilion. That's where you throw that in. Well, speaking of that, is it an official sellout yet?
There's about 40 tickets left. So we're looking at around 2,000 in there.
Jeez. And one that I've got to ask you about, and I don't know how much you're going to go into it, but you pulled off one of the most miraculous matchups in recent Australian MMA history by getting Goeorge Sotiropoulos, the former UFC veteran. He was like the face of Australian MMA for a while. How on earth did you pull him out of retirement at 45 to take on a killer in Josh Togo? Please explain to me, like, did you buy him a castle?
Look, George actually came to us. We've always been interested in having George back on. As you mentioned, he was one of the pioneers of Australian MMA. He probably should have been a lightweight champion in the UFC. It was pretty stiff to not get a title shot after going 7-0 in there. But he actually we just been speaking to him a little bit, and then he came to us and he said, I want to jump back in there. We ran through some options with him, and he was really excited about the Josh Togo fight. And as you know, Josh is probably the scariest lightweight in the country right now. And George was like, "Yep, let's do it." He's keen, so it's going to be a cracking fight. I've watched George in the gym a few times over the last few weeks, and he looks really sharp. His ground game's better than ever. He's still been actively competing in jits comps, and he's striking as well. It's real crisp, real clean, and he doesn't look a day over 30.
So you're saying this isn't a money fight? He wants to come back and compete more than just this one fight?
I'd expect so. That's another one where we need to wait and see how the fight plays out. But George is not just coming back for a payday. He really wants to compete, get back in there, and I guess put his skills to the test. And
speaking of skills to the test, apart from those two, because they're your headline grabber fights, obviously, champ versus champ and Goeorge Sotiropoulos coming back. It's like we were just talking about. It's amazing that it's overshadowing Josh Togo. Like it really is. It's just to have George coming back. That shows you how good those two fights are. What's the sort of dark horse fight for you? What's really sticking out for you?
There's a couple, to be honest. The Jarrett Wilbraham and Brad Ramsey fight's going to be a banger. These guys both kind of love to stand there and bang and put on shows. So I think that one will be real exciting, and that'll kind of shape the featherweight division a little bit more. And I know Jarrett wants to get back to a shot against Khan, so a win here kind of puts him back on that path to get back to that title. The Jonathan Mikhailov and Daniel Kerr fight is amazing because Daniel Kerr's a 135 fight Muay Thai veteran. He's fought against the likes of John Wayne Parr. So that fight, and Jonathan Mikhailov as well has said he wants to stand and knock Daniel out. So I think that one will be, a striker's delight. And my fight of the night prediction is Jeff Messer and Michael Barber. It's a fight that Michael Barber called for, and there's just a little bit of I guess competitive heat there. But I think both those guys love to just stand and bang. So I think that'll just kick off the card with a bang. Like that's going to be fight of the night, I think.
And just a question I've got to ask you that popped into my brain the other day. How far away do you think a fighter like Colby Thickness is away from a title fight?
I'd expect he's pretty close. He's a great fighter. I also think he's pretty close to getting signed to the UFC. I know his record's only 3-0, but he's obviously got the skills, and being a main training partner of Alex, I don't think he would be too far away. I think a couple of wins getting to maybe 5-0, 6-0, and you'd see him in the UFC. But he's got a big test ahead of him. Emrahan is an incredible wrestler. There's not that much footage of him. People haven't really seen that much of him, but his team are super confident in him. And yeah, from what I've seen in the training room, he's an animal. So I think that'll also be a cracking fight. And
when it comes to the entire card, we were speaking about the UFC. Is there anyone, you've been close with these guys and putting these fights together and whatnot, who do you think, just off the top of your head, is the next to be called up out of this card next week?
Look, I'd expect the winner of the main event to probably get signed to the UFC. Kitt's been on their radar for quite a long time. He's 12-6. He's got finishes over some huge names in Australia. And then Kevin, he's a double champ training out of CKB with Izzy and Carlos and those guys. I think that whoever wins this fight would, the UFC would definitely be having a look at them, if not signing him. Especially with the Sydney card coming up, it's a really good chance for some of these guys to debut. Like we had with Jack Jenkins in Perth. You saw the reception that he got. I feel like one of these two guys could debut in Sydney, and it would be massive.
And we see that the UFC's announced, I think it's September 10th, to UFC 293. Eternal loves to piggyback UFC events. Is there any sort of workings on a Sydney card for HEX?
No, not for us. We're like I've said in the past, we're just here running our own race. I understand that they do like to kind of follow the UFC when they come to Australia, which is great for them. But we're here to just do our thing, put on the best fights that the country has to offer, and just keep selling out these venues. And yeah.
And speaking of not just some of the best signings you've had, because Goeorge Sotiropoulos is amazing, but if I can biasly push that one aside, you got Michael the Voice Chiavello to commentate your event. Now, how on earth does that even come about? Because he is, probably just behind Joe Rogan. Some people might even think above, at least on par with in terms of MMA commentators. So how did that even come about?
Look, I'd have him up there as one of the best in the world. He's so highly regarded around Asia, obviously from commentating in One and Dream and K1 and those kind of promotions. Michael's a Melbourne guy, and we found out he was back here in Melbourne, so reached out to him. And Michael's a great guy. He's amazing to work with, and obviously his skill set is incredible. So I'm so excited to have him on, and our new look commentary team as a whole as well is really exciting. We've got Bren Foster, who's a second-degree Taekwondo black belt and a Hollywood movie star, so he'll kind of bring his colourful side to the team. And then Frank Barker, who's just been a mainstay of HEX. He's been there since HEX 1. Everyone knows Frankie. And Samantha Riches, will be hosting for us. She's done the AFL Grand Final, the Commonwealth Games, the Formula One. So we're really building a good core team around the show and just going to keep taking this to the new level. Is
it set and done for you? Like, is this, you've got all the pieces you want, or over the next couple of events, are you looking to add more and more things?
Look, we're always looking to evolve and grow as a promotion. We've got some pretty big broadcast deals in the works right now, which obviously I can't disclose at the moment. But every event we're just going to keep on evolving, keep growing, and seeing where we can take this thing, because I feel like the team we have at HEX now and the fighters we've got here and the production, it's something that we can take worldwide, not just here in Australia. I feel like we can really get to this global stage.
And in terms of, Melbourne's an excellent hub. A lot of people live in Melbourne. A lot of people coming over for HEX. Me, myself, I'm coming over just to watch it as well. Will there be any special guests? Do you think anyone's going to pop in? Maybe some superstars. Maybe you said some Hollywood stars. Come on, mate. You got to give us a little bit of something.
Look, I'd love to break some news on your show, Mitch. I can't disclose, but there will be some big names there. One thing I would tell you, we've got the Melbourne Storm NRL team coming down. They'll be there in attendance, but you'll see on the night. But there's some big names, not just from the UFC, but also just from around Australia. We've got some massive names coming down. HEX is starting to really get the recognition it deserves. So yeah, you'll find out next Friday who we've got coming down.
So now I've got to research some rugby so I can chat to one of them. Mate, if anyone had never been to a HEX show, perhaps an MMA show in general, just finally before I let you go, what would you tell the average person? Because no MMA fans are going to be there regardless. It's one of the best shows of the year. But what would you tell the average person on why they should come to HEX Fight Series?
Look, there's still a little bit of a stigma around MMA that it's a violent, bloody, cage fighting. But it's more than that. It's an experience. You come down with your friends, you get to immerse yourself in the atmosphere that's at HEX and enjoy not just great fights, but enjoy the atmosphere with your friends. Have a drink, and immerse yourself in a different world where. You would know how many people over the last few years have kind of found a love for MMA. People that I know that have never watched the sport that I've watched the UFC with, and they've fallen in love with it. So it's a sport where once you go to a live event once, you'll want to go back to every live event you can. I go to so many MMA shows in the year just because I love being there. I love the atmosphere. I love watching the fights. I love the experience. So, HEX is the pinnacle of MMA in the country. So to be able to immerse yourself in that atmosphere in Melbourne, it's like nothing else.
Awesome, mate. And I'm absolutely looking forward to it. They head on over to hexfightseries.com and get your tickets. And look, it's going to be an amazing event. I can't wait to be there. And just, congratulations for getting it all together.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I'm happy to have you down. It's been a long time coming, so excited to have you down at the show. And yeah, like you said, make sure you go online and get your tickets now. Less than 50 left, so be one of the 2,000 that's going to be there.
Thanks, mate.